Hi everyone and welcome to southern Spain. In this video, we're going to take a 5-day cycling tour through the Valencia region of Spain. We're going to check out some bodegas, some vineyards, we're going to do some bicycling, check out some history and some great scenery all here in southern Spain. If you're on your couch, grab a glass of wine and join us as we do Tour to Rotova in southern Spain.
Our cycling trip takes place in the Valencia region, just inland from the Mediterranean Sea. Our starting point, Rotova, is just minutes away from the seaside cities of Valencia and Gandia. Our cycling adventure begins in the town of Rotova, the birthplace of my grandfather Jose Molto. Yes, I have family here, and my family roots go way back in the history of this region where olives, oranges, and various fruits are plentiful. Joining me on this ride is fellow Canadian Mike Lawrence and a local rider, Jose Carmen Faust, a member of the Molto family here in Rotova. We referred to our trio of riders as the Three Amigos. The terrain and landscape changed shortly after we left town. This is a very dry region, and although water would seem in short supply, there are many natural aquifers in the hills. Most towns have fountains in the main square, and they are used constantly by visiting cyclists. Touring through Spain offers great scenery and varied elevations and grades. The roads are full of windy turns and ever-changing views of hills and crops. Throughout our trip, we appreciate the lack of vehicles on the secondary roads we travel. Spain has a highway system for cars and trucks that results in only minor local traffic being seen on these scenic back roads. When we did come across oncoming or overtaking traffic, the drivers were very patient and respectful because cycling is a very popular and supported activity here. This region is a very popular place all year long for both local cyclists and visiting tourists. Although there were seemingly few wineries at our starting point, it did not take long before we found ourselves in the wine-growing district. Within a couple hours of cycling, our trio arrived at our first bodega of the tour. The small town of Caracola is home to Celler Thomas Torres. This is a small specialty winery growing their own grapes right on their property. The owners are very involved in every bottle and have a hands-on approach to their product. From the field to the bottle, the owners are involved in every step of the winemaking process. Like so many of the proud Spanish winemakers, they have a passion that shows through in every sampling they offer to guests. The soil, terrain, and climate create many unique wine-growing opportunities in Spain. Many of those wineries capture their individuality with a unique flavor and consistent quality, like that which we experienced here in Caracola. After some small samplings, it was time to get back on the bikes for the ride towards the historic city of Bocairent. On the route, there is an excellent swimming spot, El Puclar. The local river has cut through the scenic canyon, leaving refreshing pools of water. Many people come here to enjoy the cool waters on the hot summer days. The brief cycling break was necessary as we had a challenging uphill ride just ahead of us. The terrain and elevations can vary dramatically in a short distance. In the first 40 kilometers we cycled along the valley, we climbed 300 meters, but as we headed up the hillside towards Bocairent, we climbed another 300 meters in just 10 kilometers. The grade sure seemed significant, especially with the added weight of the luggage bags on our bikes. Pushing on from there, we eventually arrived at our 55-kilometer destination, Bocairent, a well-preserved historic town with plenty to see. The old town has Moorish carved caves for storing grain and ice, and the medieval area on the hill is an extraordinary walking experience. Whether you take a day or a night stroll, the old town is incredible. With narrow cobblestone streets, alleys, and stairways that are unique to themselves, every turn and corner in Bocairent delivers a special view. Any time of the day, you can take a walk, and this town will take you back centuries with its well-preserved history. In the morning, after grabbing our bikes from our secure lockup area at our hotel, it was time for the short 30-kilometer ride to another scenic town, Vienna. This is another cool historic town located right in the wine district. Like so many towns of southern Spain, there is a castle on the hill, an important part of the local defenses. For centuries, different civilizations have occupied southern Spain. You will see castles like this in prime condition, and you will see other castles and towers scattered throughout the countryside, abandoned but with interesting history and stories. The Phoenicians, Greeks, Carthaginians, Romans, and Moors all inhabited the Iberian Peninsula at one time. Walls and castles became common as different cultures tried to protect their towns and citizens from the next conquest. The castle in Vienna is a classic Spanish castle drawing from centuries of military knowledge and cultural influence. Before we headed out in the morning, we cycled to town and came across this massive paella dish being prepared for a festival. This rice dish is extremely popular in the Valencian region and changes from area to area. Along with the traditionally locally grown rice, you will see chicken and pork or seafood used, but the food from the sea is rarely mixed with other inland meats. It was time to say goodbye to Vienna, but first we cycled to nearby Las Virtudes Bodega. This is a large-scale winery that brings in grapes from the area to begin their winemaking. The entire process can be seen here, from the unloading of local grapes, the crushing and processing, fermenting and aging is all witnessed here on site. The sampling of the final product is done downstairs in one of the old caverns. This is where wine was traditionally aged and the grape juice was also stored in the floor vaults, but today there are modern approaches used. The wines produced here are top-notch, and modernization has allowed for more control over the process. After some great wine samples and some excellent food as well, it was time to get back on the bikes and head to the furthest point of our trip. When we planned our trip, we recognized that none of us 60-year-olds had participated in a multi-day ride with full luggage racks. For the cycling viewers wondering about more cycling footage, it's coming, don't worry. I found out after decades of camera work that I had never tried filming from a bicycle while riding on cobblestone streets. Along with the cobblestone streets are the very narrow streets that kept Jose busy as his GPS kept recalculating our location in the winding narrow streets and alleys. A cycling trip like this was a real learning experience on the first few days, but evolved as we found ourselves on a mixture of paved and occasional gravel roads. As we continued cycling, we made sure to fill up our water bottles at every fountain we saw. Every historic town seems to have a fountain in the main square or Plaza Mayor. When you cycle in Spain and you see a fountain, you fill up every bottle you have with water. The cycling is great and the scenery is awesome, but you need to keep hydrated over a full day on the bike. On the morning that we continued our ride further inland, we had some great riding views. This day was a learning experience as we left the paved roads and started heading onto less traveled gravel roads and up into the high hills towards the region of La Mancha and onward to the town of Almanza. The town of Almanza is 700 meters above sea level. This was the part of the trip where we got a little off course, but in the end, it added to the laughter, stories, and memories. We had taken a bit of a scenic route to access the hilltops of this Almanza and La Mancha boundary. This challenging mountain bike detour took us up to a height of 1,000 meters, an elevation where the windmill generators operate. After a few dusty kilometers, we found ourselves back on paved roads and onto our furthest destination, the town and castle of Almanza. As we neared Almanza, the cycling was easy on the paved level roads and the traffic was always respectful and gave plenty of room. As we cycled into the town, the streets were scenic and led us to the castle. Cycling on cobblestone and interlock brick is fairly easy on the cyclist, but my camera had a tricky time not shaking as we cycled. We finally reached the castle of Almanza, our furthest destination. Here we enjoyed a locally made wine that we also enjoy back home in Ontario, Canada.
It's been a crazy few days of biking, but well worth it to have Castillo de la Manza in front of Castillo Almanza.
The views of this majestic castle were awesome, and enjoying wine here was the focus point and furthest destination of our trip. After 3 days of cycling, scenery, and wine testing, it was time to make our return and head back to our starting point. The trip back to Rotova had 2 more days of cycling with more great scenery, more incredible weather, and 1 more winery tour. The cycling on the way back to our starting point was slightly easier. Over the first few days, we were steadily climbing uphill towards Almanza. Yes, there were hills with climbs and descents, but there was a steady uphill ascent over those 3 days. On the way back to Rotova, we were on a slow, gradual descent to a lower altitude. The cycling was still challenging, scenic, and rewarding, but there was a general feeling that the grade was easier, or perhaps we were just in better shape after our break-in period on the bikes. With a different course for our return back to Rotova, it was interesting to follow the valley route and see a few more towns and also the varied agriculture in each valley. This was prime biking conditions. The cycling on this day was awesome. The three amigos had found their pedaling groove and were in the zone. We stopped for lunch in yet another scenic town, then got back on the bikes, stopped for water and a couple breaks. In general, we were just in a great state of mental and physical well-being as we cycled as a trio. You may notice that I had matching shirt styles, but with our own individual colors. We even had custom Yeti mugs made for each of us to match our identifying shirts. People looked at us like we were professional riders, but we were far from that. We were just three fun guys, three amigos, out for a 5-day tour. After one more water break, it was time to paddle in for our last wine tour.
One of the great things about touring Spain, especially the Valencia region by bicycle, is how you get to take the time to take in the scenery, take in the history, but also appreciate how the terrain affects the quality and types of grapes grown in each valley. In this valley here in Valencia, if you look back here, each field is a different type of grape. As you work your way up, you also notice you've into trees. There's not enough soil for vines. So in here, each field has a different type of grape. And as you work your way over here, the vines end and we're back into the pine trees. Every area is unique. The climate, the temperature determines what kind of grape can be grown in this area. So by bicycle at a slow speed, you get to appreciate the history, the scenery, and also the uniqueness that creates the wines of Valencia.
Situated in this classic-looking homestead in a sunny valley, the Rafael Cambra Winery would deliver a great tour, a great sampling of true Spanish wines, and light food pairings to accompany the really excellent wines. Our tour of the winery started in the adjacent fields where the grapes are grown, and as you can see, it was harvest season. Inside, we were shown the process and personal touch and the immense pride the Spanish wineries have in their final product. During the sampling, it was a great experience to sample such great wines in a perfect setting. Many of these hacienda-type structures are protected as heritage structures, so seeing this building incorporated to the sampling session was another bonus on this tour. Cycling tours with food, wine, and sunny skies do not get any better than this. As we headed out towards our last night in the Ontinyent area, it was easy to see why we would require so much water while cycling. The grapes grow extremely well in the endless sunlight, but it is very dry here and the soil looks rough. That, however, is one of the treasures for grape growing here. The soil gives the grapes an incredible flavor that is supported by the many hours of sunlight and a climate that rarely varies from year to year. This helps deliver consistent wines and consistently great cycling in this region too. As we cycled towards our last overnight stay near Ontinyent, it was a really great experience to enjoy our pace and our accomplishments on this trip. 3 60-ish-year-old guys, 2 Canadians and 1 Spanish, getting together for a multi-day bike tour, experiencing challenging cycling hills and some gravel routes, taking in incredible history and scenery along with great food and top-notch wines, and now we're able to mentally relax as we rode on towards Rotova. On our last day, we got some uplifting support. A few friends from Rotova met us in the morning and offered to take our luggage back to Rotova for us. That sure made the home stretch a lot easier. We had become accustomed to all that weight and suddenly we were flying along much lighter rides for our home stretch. The last valleys, hills, and flat stretches were that much more enjoyable without the weight we were accustomed to. As we meandered past the grapes, olives, fruits, and crops, our pace and ride was incredibly relaxing and very memorable. This riding reminded me of the cycling videos I watched while winter training back in my Canadian basement. The quiet roads here make cycling so relaxing. With few vehicles and farm tractors a rarity, one can truly ride without a worry. We experienced that same comfort on all 5 days as we rode the Valencia region and also crossed over briefly into the Alicante, La Mancha, and Almanza regions. As we got closer to our start point and now our finishing point, the tour to Rotova started to wind down, and we all had a sense of accomplishment, camaraderie, and we'd all had big smiles as we approached my grandfather's hometown. It was time to say goodbye for now, but not forever. I will be planning more biking trips for future rides in the Valencia region of sunny southern Spain.
Wow, what an amazing 5 days of cycling here in southern Spain. The people, the culture, the history, and of course, the wine. Southern Spain, the Valencia region. Put it on your bucket list of adventures. You will not be disappointed. Hope to see you here in Spain soon.